People like to believe that love is always a choice made freely, that when we stay with someone, it's because our hearts are full, our minds are clear, and our intentions are pure. That's a comforting idea. It makes relationships feel romantic and simple. But the truth is harder to admit. Sometimes we don't stay because we're in love. Sometimes we stay because we need to. This is not a story about villains or heroes. It's a story about dependency, fear, survival, and the quiet bargains people make with themselves when leaving feels more dangerous than staying. I stayed because I needed him, and for a long time, I didn't even realize that need was shaping every decision I made. When I met him, my life was already unstable. I don't mean dramatic chaos, the kind you see in movies, but the slow, exhausting instability that wears you down over time, financial uncertainty, emotional loneliness. A constant sense that one mistake could unravel everything I'd worked to hold together. He came into my life calm, grounded, and certain. He knew what he wanted. He had structure where I had doubt, security where I had fear. He didn't promise to save me, but his presence made things feel safer. And at the time, that felt like love. At first, staying felt like choosing him. Later, it felt like choosing survival. There were signs early on that something wasn't quite right. Not abuse, not cruelty, just imbalance. He made most of the decisions. He paid for most things. He had the final say more often than I noticed, and I let that happen because it felt easier than pushing back. When you need someone, you start to confuse gratitude with loyalty. You tell yourself that compromise is maturity, that silence is peace, that discomfort is just the price of stability. I told myself I was being practical. I told myself this was what grown-up relationships looked like. But deep down, there was a quiet voice asking questions I didn't want to answer. Do I want him, or do I need what he provides? If I were completely secure on my own, would I still choose this? Am I staying because I'm loved or because I'm afraid? Those questions didn't disappear. They waited. Over time, the relationship settled into a rhythm that looked healthy from the outside. We weren't dramatic. We didn't fight loudly. We didn't break up and get back together. We functioned. We planned. We moved forward. But inside, I was shrinking. I stopped voicing certain opinions because they led nowhere. I stopped dreaming out loud because practicality always won. I stopped imagining a different life because imagining felt dangerous. When someone else holds the ground beneath your feet, independence can feel like a threat. That's the part people don't talk about. Need doesn't always feel desperate. Sometimes it feels responsible. Sometimes it wears the mask of adulthood. Sometimes it convinces you that wanting more is selfish. I told myself that love wasn't supposed to be exciting, that passion fades, that comfort is what matters, and maybe that's true for some people. But for me, comfort had slowly turned into confinement. I didn't leave because nothing was wrong enough. There was no single moment I could point to and say, that's when I should have gone. And that made staying easier to justify. If he wasn't cruel, wasn't unfaithful, wasn't intentionally hurting me, then what right did I have to want more? But emotional dependence doesn't need a dramatic event to be real. It grows quietly, fed by routine and fear. It shows up when the idea of leaving feels less like freedom and more like falling. I stayed because I didn't know who I would be without him. That realization scared me more than the relationship itself. When your sense of safety is tied to another person, separation feels like erasing yourself. I worried about money, about loneliness, about failing on my own, about proving that the people who doubted me were right. So I stayed, I adapted, I convinced myself. I learned how to be grateful instead of fulfilled, how to be stable instead of alive, how to need less of myself and more of him. And the hardest part is this: he didn't force that on me. I chose it, not because I was weak, but because I was afraid. Need has a way of disguising itself as love, especially when you're tired of struggling. Especially when someone offers you certainty in a world that feels uncertain. Especially when the cost of independence feels higher than the cost of staying. Over time, the imbalance became impossible to ignore. Not because he changed, but because I did. I started noticing how often I deferred, how rarely I initiated, how much of my identity existed only in relation to him. I wasn't unhappy all the time, that made it harder. I was just muted, like a version of myself turned down to a lower volume. The moment that changed everything wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, ordinary. I was alone one afternoon, and I realized I felt relief when he wasn't there. Not peace, relief. That's when I knew something was wrong. Love doesn't require you to disappear to function. Safety shouldn't cost you your voice. Need shouldn't be the foundation of a relationship. It should be a phase you grow out of, not a structure you live inside. I started asking myself a different question. Not why should I leave, but what am I losing by staying? The answer scared me. I was losing time. I was losing self-trust. I was losing the chance to learn how to stand on my own. And the truth I had avoided finally became clear. I wasn't staying because I loved him. I was staying because I didn't believe I could survive without him. That belief was the real problem. Leaving wasn't easy. It didn't feel empowering at first. It felt terrifying. I second-guessed myself constantly. I mourned not just the relationship, but the safety it gave me. I worried I had made a mistake. I worried I would regret it. But slowly something changed. I started making decisions again, small ones at first. What I wanted to do with my time, how I wanted to spend my money, who I wanted to be when no one else was directing me. Independence didn't arrive as confidence. It arrived as discomfort, as responsibility, as fear mixed with relief, and eventually as pride. Looking back now, I don't blame myself for staying. I understand why I did. I was doing the best I could with the resources and beliefs I had at the time. Needing someone doesn't make you broken, it makes you human. But building a life around that need will eventually ask for a price. If you're listening to this and you see yourself in this story, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about judging your relationship. This isn't about telling you to leave. Only you can know what's right for you. This is about honesty. Ask yourself why you're staying. Ask yourself what would happen if the need disappeared. Ask yourself who you would be if safety wasn't your only goal. Love should be a choice you make, not a condition you endure. Support should strengthen you, not replace you, and staying should come from desire, not fear. I stayed because I needed him. I left because I needed myself more, and learning that difference changed everything.